Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Crunching Your Growth. I'm your host, Phil Masiello, and welcome back to the show. And today we always talk about real sustainable growth, something that doesn't fall apart as soon as the ad costs go up. So today I'm really excited. I'm always excited, but today I'm excited because I've got, I think, one of the true leaders of mission-driven businesses and the conscious consumer movement, John Replogle. He's a founding partner of One Better Ventures and the former CEO of Seventh Generation. He led iconic brands like Burt's Bees. He was in leadership positions with Unilever before that. But he believes that business is one of the most powerful forces on earth and that power should be harnessed for the greater good. So today we're going to dig into the practical side of that belief. How to scale with purpose, design culture intentionally, build values to drive decisions, lead teams through high growth moments without losing trust or your mind. And so if you're a founder or operator or brand builder, to grow the right way, you're in the right place. So really, let's jump in. Let's find out a little bit more about John and what he's been doing and what he does and how he does it, because I think he's a wealth of knowledge. John, thanks for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Phil. Thank you for having me.
Sure. If you could, I know I summarized your history, but I probably didn't do it justice. If you could just sort of summarize, what you've done, because I know you've done a lot, and I think you've got a wealth of knowledge to share.
Well, thank you. You were very generous in your introduction. I've had a great career, principally in the consumer health and wellness space. I started my career with the Boston Consulting Group. I owe them a debt of great credit and gratitude. That was foundational for me. I learned so much there. I had the chance to be there before and after business school, both in Boston and London, working on a great array of different cases and clients. But I did decide that consulting wasn't my career. I made a switch over to Guinness. At that time, Guinness was kind of its own standalone business. Later, it merged with Grand Metropolitan to create Diageo, the world's largest alcohol beverage company. And at Guinness, I really had tremendous mentors, people who looked after me, challenged me, and encouraged me to stretch for new limits. And in my 8 years at Guinness, I had 7 different roles. So it was terrific, diversity of roles from being in strategy to sales to moving over to the UK and build the sales organization there, ultimately running Guinness in Great Britain before acquiring Seagram, moving to Napa Valley, putting together our wine company, and then running Guinness in the US, which was just a dream job.
Wow, that's
I left there, though, after I'd spent some time with a coach, and maybe we'll get into this, but I'd really been spending a lot of time thinking about what am I here to do? What's my life purpose? How do I hear my calling? And I was raising 4 daughters, and it really pressed upon me to figure out what I wanted to do in having an impact in the world around me. I left Guinness. I went to Unilever, a brilliant company, just tremendous brands and really good people, and had an opportunity to work for another great coach mentor and worked with a team on something called the Dove Campaign for Real Beauty, which is remains to this day, nearly 25 years later, an iconic platform for brand disruption. And but I was also missing something at Unilever. I only stayed there for 3 years, had a great experience, but decided it was time to listen to my inner voice and be more entrepreneurial. I've always been, I'm more of an intrapreneur than a true entrepreneur. I've always kind of built businesses from the inside, but I had the chance to join a rapidly growing business called Burt's Bees in an emerging space called natural personal care. And I stepped in and took over for the founder, for Roxanne and for Burt. And it was just a tremendous ride, a great brand, a great business. We really shaped it into something special. And then ultimately sold it. And I stayed after the sale to the Clorox company for a number of years. before moving on to another purpose-built brand, which was Seventh Generation. Again, in both the case with Burt's and Seventh Gen, I didn't start either of them, but followed founders who really were really clear-minded, very principled, and I was able to take the great kind of raw material they had built and shape it into a bigger and stronger business over time. And so we scaled Seventh Generation for about 7 years, and then lo and behold, Unilever came along and wanted to be in the business. So I wound up back with the old team at Unilever, and I stayed there for about a year for the transition, and then created something called One Better Ventures. I did this with a number of partners, close friends from both Burt's Bees and Seventh Gen, and for the last 10 or so years, we've been advising founders, entrepreneurs, coaching, developing their businesses, investing in them, and working alongside private equity firms to accelerate and unlock value in purpose-driven growth brands in the health and wellness space. So that's the run of 35 years in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great career. It's a great career. Let me ask you a question about what do you think big companies operators get right that startups ignore, and what do you think startups get right that big companies struggle with?
So big companies have done a lot of things well. They do an incredibly effective job at recruiting, at developing talent. Diageo had the Diageo way of brand building. Unilever has its own academy. There was great training and development in both those organizations, both from within and resources from outside. Um, they have really clear principles, processes. They get the systems right. They can replicate things time and time again. They do risk mitigation really well. So there are a number of things that large corporations do. They're good stewards by and by, and some of the companies actually do well in the world too. So um, I think that's the case at Unilever. So that's what they do well. I mean, what they lack is what entrepreneurial businesses do so well, and it's part of the vibrancy of the U.S. economy, which is we're a creator economy. We have both the capital and the creativity and the frameworks for entrepreneurs to dream, to create, to build, to scale, and ultimately to sell, exit, or move brands into portfolios for stewardship. And so I think we're a really unique marketplace, and I think both sides of the equation do it well. But entrepreneurs are natural risk takers. They're dreamers. They meet unmet needs, which for me that's the definition of true innovation: is identifying and meeting an unmet need in the marketplace.
Right. Um, you talk a lot about mission driven. And at what point does mission sort of stop being a message and become more of a, I guess, an operating system, culture, and how do you install that company wide?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say that if it's not an operating system, if it's not endemic to the organization, if it's not woven into the fabric of decision making and values and everything that's done, then it's not truly a mission. Then it's just a purpose statement, if you will. It's just a placard on a wall. And there are a lot of companies that have a purpose statement, then don't really live by it. There are some great classic examples of that. I think you can go back and really look at the old Johnson & Johnson company and how they lost their way
Yeah.
so many times because their purpose statement became wallpaper. And yet there are, truly mission driven organizations. And for them, the mission becomes the North Star. It's a unifying and aligning force. And one of the most important things you do as a leader, a CEO, is you create alignment. Alignment is about clarity. It's clarity of process, principles, priorities, and that's what a mission helps to do. It pulls all of that together and aligns the organization so that you can go further, faster with fewer people.
Yeah, I did a show about Ben and Jerry's with some folks because I just think they're uh, maybe one of the greatest at being mission driven and holding to it throughout everything. You know, and you can see it now. I think where there's a struggle about the board and things like that. But I think Ben and Jerry's was one of the best examples of that, and they've stuck to it since they started, which I think is it's difficult to do. You know,
Yeah.
as you grow, I think sometimes entrepreneurs lose their way when they start getting money involved and sales grow, and then it becomes, you know, almost sales at all costs sometimes.
And what makes Ben and Jerry special and Patagonia and others is that that mission is so true and so interwoven that even after the founder leaves, the successors carry it on. And I think that's a real acid test. And so Ben and Jerry's has done a brilliant job of that. I had a front row seat running seventh gen in Burlington, Vermont, just down the road from Ben and Jerry's. So
Right, right.
compared notes often with the team there.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah, terrific organization.
Yeah, that's a great town. My daughter was just there for about 6 months doing a co-op from her college, and she was up in Burlington, and so my wife and I spent a good amount of time up there over the last 6 months. It's a great town. It's a
Yeah.
really great town. Um, so yeah, speaking of seventh generation, like when you took over seventh generation, um, because that company was already moving. You took it over, I would imagine, to help scale it. But what did you think that, or what did you decide? I guess that the CEO had to personally own, and what did you sort of deliberately delegate?
Yeah, seventh generation had so many great assets when I joined. I mean, the clarity of purpose was there. They used something called the precautionary principle, which guided all innovation and what ingredients would use and not use. That led to a pipeline of real breakthrough innovations over time. For example, seventh generation really was the first to create recycled paper towels and go, totally chlorine free in terms of that area. And yet, while there was a really good kind of mission and purpose, the business model was lacking. Seventh generation didn't know how to make money.
Oh,
It was a loss making company. It was running out of cash. And you can't be a sustainable enterprise if you're not profitable.
right.
Um, and that doesn't mean you just cut all the principles and drive the profit. You have to figure out how to do that. In fact, I have something called the five P's that I believe in, and that great businesses are built on purpose, right? They have great product, distinct product. They have amazing people, and then they have a core set of principles, an operating model by which they operate. And those four P's lead to the fifth P, which is profit. So if you get those four right, purpose, product, people, and principles, then the fifth P follows. And that's what we had to put in place at seventh generation. We had a good purpose, but we were in search of a business model, so we had to really hone what we were trying to do. That meant making some hard choices, doing things differently. I had to be frank and transparent with the team. We were, 9 months away from running out of cash, so we had to make some difficult changes, and we did just that. We it helped solidify who we were and what we stood for in the marketplace, and then it really gave birth to a whole new wave of innovation and growth, expanding into larger retailers like Target and Walmart over time.
Usually that pressure, or at least from, you know, from the outside looking in, usually that pressure where the business model is faltering and profit or cash flow actually has to
Mhm.
sort of reset. Isn't that uh, when purpose driven businesses sort of fall apart? They almost have to push everything aside to try and focus on profit. So the ability to manage both, I think, is difficult. Is it not?
Yeah, it is difficult. They're not. It's not a zero sum game. They can be complementary. If you have great product, people, and purpose, you're going to be more profitable, right? I mean, it just that makes sense. So, in a lot of companies, what will make the difference is the courage and the conviction of the CEO, alongside with the patience and the rooted good governance of the board. Um, I've seen boards blink at the wrong time. I've seen boards also not have the courage to change. Both can lead to suboptimal, poor outcomes, or even the end of the company. So it's in those moments of challenge where you really have to hunker down, and that's where leadership needs to shine, and you've got to go back to core principles. And once you get a hold of those and build kind of energy in the organization, that's the best way to see yourself through those challenging times.
Yeah, I would imagine you would have to have good, patient financial partners at the same time because they're usually the ones. I mean, obviously, when you read stories in the press and everything, and you hear entrepreneurs talk about, when the venture capitalists come in, when the private equity comes in, that's when everything changes and blah, blah, blah. I always think about that because I've been in that situation, but I've never felt like they were trying to change the business. They were just trying to get us to focus more on what's important. You can keep who you are, you can keep the culture, you can keep all that, but you have to figure out how to make a profit. And I think
Right.
that's where entrepreneurs sometimes lose it because they think, in my opinion, from talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they feel like when they read these stories about how, you know, Uber just kept taking on capital, they kept raising money, raising money, raising money, and I always look at that and say, yeah, but they had a business model. They were generating cash. They may not have been profitable. Everybody always throws the Amazon thing to me when I talk about this because they always say, well, Amazon wasn't profitable for, 10 or 15 years. Yeah, it's true. But they were generating cash and they were growing. So the money that they were taking in, they were using to build the business even further. And when you think about where they are today, Amazon, and the loyalty of customers, or it may not even be loyalty. I mean, it's so integrated, I think, into society that Amazon is the first place you go to look for buying something. So, um, yeah, I think that that whole dynamic between money and the operator gets a little skewed sometimes.
Right. And it's one of the most important decisions you can make as a founder entrepreneur is from whom do you take money?
Absolutely.
And who matters as much as how much, the valuation, et cetera. Um, these are true partners. These are people you need to make sure you have the chemistry to go through the tough times with. People who won't blink, people who have the resources to see you through. Um, that's really important. Now, some private equity gets a bad rap, gets maligned, and some of that is deserved. But there's a lot of good in the capital markets, and really good private equity or venture capital firms come in and they help bring true value added. They think through problems. They help you source people. They're a great sounding board. They're there through the tough times, and provide good governance. And I think it is perhaps underweighted how important good governance and a good board and investors are to the success of an enterprise.
Yeah, the subject of raising capital always comes up. It's come up on this show, 100 times. It comes up when I mentor clients, or and I speak at like University of Maryland and mentor at University of Maryland and college and University of Baltimore entrepreneurs, and the subject of capital always comes up, and I always tell people that you have to find strategic capital. You can't just go out and say, I'm going to take whatever money comes my way, because that's where you get into trouble. You have to
Right.
find strategic capital, somebody that's aligned with what you're trying to accomplish and can help you. Because investors aren't, if you're just taking money, I think you missed the point, right? You want investors who are going to help you, whether it's opening up doors, whether it's giving you guidance, because the the private equity guys, venture capital guys, these guys have, most of them, like yourself, have been through so many different things that you're an asset and a coach as well. So you have to keep that communication line open. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs sort of shut down. They get the money and it's like, no, we don't want anybody to know about the problems we're having.
Yeah.
But that's like the wrong thing to do, because they can help you overcome the problems. If it becomes a different scenario when you don't tell them, and then 6 months from now you've got an even bigger problem.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important principle. So whenever I serve on a board, that is one of the key principles, which is bad news needs to travel faster than good news. Right. We are all partners here. We've got to work together, and we can only be helpful if we know the truth.
Right.
And so you got to put truth out there, and that's where the chemistry and the trust come into play. And so entrepreneurs really need to think deeply about not just, you know, the terms of the deal and the valuation, but is this partnered capital? Do they bring value added? Are they patient? Are we aligned in principle in terms of what we're trying to do? And if you get that, that's rare air. That's really important, but that's a long term accelerant to the growth of your business.
Yeah, I had a gentleman invest. He had a private equity group. His name was Henry Nacella, and he unfortunately passed on, but he he was very much into consumer products, and I found him and his coaching to be some of the best in the world and that
Mm,
I've ever experienced, I guess, in my world. But every time there was a problem with the business, I would pick up the phone and call him and explain exactly what the problem was. And I think entrepreneurs sometimes are afraid that they're going to get yelled at, or somebody's going to say, "Oh, I'm disappointed in you. Oh, you didn't tell me this." But I used to call him up and say, "Look, this is the problem. Here's what I'm thinking," and he was always able to sort of calm me down, focus me, and
yeah.
explain what he felt we should do, which was a course of action. And 90% of the time he was right. He was a great guy. And even after business, I kept in touch, and he was one of the smartest private equity guys, and he did very specific deals. He did big deals like Up on Pan and a lot of food deals, but he also did some smaller deals. But he was just a great strategic thinker. And I thought one of the best deals we ever made was taking money from his fund.
Sounds that way. You found a jewel, and they're out there, and I think entrepreneurs need to keep in mind that all business has problems, and it's a fallacy to think that you won't run into it, and you can't bury it and you can't hide it, and so this is a pretty deep relationship you're entering into with a partner. And you got to put it on the table, and you got to trust that they're going to bring insight, experience, value added. They're going to be there in the trenches with you when the going gets tough, and that's really an important decision.
Yeah, you have a document which you shared with us, which if you could talk through it, I think it would be great, about your, just real quick, your 5 rules for entrepreneurs, and then you have also 5 rules for um,
For
raising
the
capital.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be
This
great if you
is
could just.
something, yeah. This is something my partners at One Better Ventures and I created. We are operators. We're really not capital guys. We moved into the capital side later in our careers, but we built and have run businesses. And we were asked a lot, often, by entrepreneurs, what are the rules? And so we put this down, and I'm not going to exhaust the audience by kind of walking through every one of these in detail, but I'm happy for you to share this. So we came up with 5 rules, quite simply, and some of which we've touched on. Mission, vision, values are the critical aligning factor in every organization. That's the foundation. You got to start there. Strategy is about commitment and choice. You have to make choices. You have to make commitments. If you fail to do either one of those, you'll lose. In other words, opportunity can often be a factor that leads companies astray. And so stick to your path, know what your core is. This is really related. The third rule is related to product companies. And for us, we grew up in a world of product distribution through retailers, et cetera. And distribution is really an important one to think through. And a lot of companies don't spend as much time thinking strategically about sales and the fact that you are the company you keep, that where you're distributed and where you're sold is a reflection of your brand, your values, et cetera. And so the pyramid works only one way. You work from the top of the pyramid down, and I can go into more detail, but you have to start at the top and work your way out. And if you start at the bottom, you'll never get to the top. And so that's a trap that a number of companies fall into. Fourth rule of brands are all about delivering a singular, focused promise. My definition of a brand is a relationship between a product and a service and a consumer, and every relationship is founded on trust. So knowing your promise, building trust around that, and delivering it is how great brands are built. And then finally, we've got five separate rules for raising capital, and I can quickly enumerate those. So the five rules of the raise, quite simply, you got to start by knowing your goals. What are you trying to raise? What matters the most? What are your principles, and how do you find partners who are aligned with those principles? Second, then, is who and what matters more than how much, right? So a lot of consumers kind of a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking it's about maximizing, it's about getting the highest value. And oftentimes, a lower valuation leads you to a better place. It means that your partner has a lower threshold to get a return, which means that they're going to make better decisions when the going gets tough. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but you really have to think through who versus how much. Um, Third, then, is you're never done raising, right? People think about these things as well. I'm in Series C or A or B. No, you're never done. Just
Right.
keep thinking about adding to it. You're always networking. You've got to practice your elevator pitch because you never know when you're going to meet the next investor. Get that super sharp. Keep your network strong and keep informing. So after you've raised capital is the time where you want to communicate the most effectively. Keep your investors well informed as you go. The fourth one is never run out. So, don't take too little, always have enough cushion. I don't know what your standard may be for a cushion, but, I like to make sure I've got at least 6 months kind of burn in the tank. If we're going to get below that, then we better be out raising. So
Right.
never cut it too close. And then finally, you got to learn the terms of the deals. Don't just rely on your legal counsel. Understand these things. You can be a quick study because oftentimes there's a trade-off between evaluation and the terms of the deal, right?
Right.
And you can get a very high valuation, but boy, someone's going to stick it to you on the rest of the terms. And that oftentimes, that's a big trap that companies get caught in. So be super careful, be super aware of that. So those are the five rules on the raise. And again, you're welcome to share the deck with those who are interested to kind of chew through each one of those.
I will share it. I think it's fantastic, and I agree with everything you said. And what I find, like you, I grew up consumer products, and I've always done consumer focused products. And still with Crunch Growth today, we focus primarily on consumer product brands that we help to scale in beauty, personal care, and food. And so, um, but I find that a lot of the principles of what you just talked about are also applicable when you're building a SaaS product, for example. You're still building a brand, or you're trying to build a brand, right? B2B products, even if you're a manufacturer trying to build a brand that resonates, because you're 100% right. It's all about the connection between the brand and the consumer, whoever's using that
Yeah.
product, and building that trust. So I try and get that across a lot to people. The capital piece, it becomes such a difficult discussion with entrepreneurs to get it across, because some of the things you said, people always get hung up on valuation, and they start trying to value their company too early, and you're saying, especially in the early rounds, because you're just starting. You can't say, well, I feel like the company's worth $10 million, and I want somebody to put in $1 million, and I'll give them 10%. It
Yeah.
doesn't always work that way. Aside from the fact that, what is it you get, what you want is more than the 10%. You want them engaged in the business. You want their help. They're going to help you find customers. They're going to help you raise more capital. They're going to help build you up. They're going to help the brand. So if you make the right decisions and find the right investors, then yeah, they can help. They can make or break you. You know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
taking money for money has never been a really good idea.
Yeah. Put another way, you want investors who are invested in the business, right?
Yeah, and
Who,
in you,
yeah,
and in
who
you.
see your success and the company's success and are willing to lean in, put their time, their talent, into it.
I was at a entrepreneurial conference a couple of months ago, and there were some venture capital guys presenting, and they were talking to the entrepreneurs about some of the things that you talked about how to raise money, and one of them said, well, they all said, we're investing in you. If you're presenting to us, we're investing in you. We're evaluating you as
Yeah.
to whether or not you can continue to lead or achieve what you're doing. But one of them said something, and I'm wondering if you could give me your take on this. He said, we'd rather invest in an A team with a B product than a
Yeah.
B team with an A product.
Yeah. 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 I would go the same way, I think. Although I obviously lean to the double A. The reason for that is, great teams can make really good products shine. Um, they can take it, they can craft the messaging around it, they can innovate around it, they can create powerful systems that make a B into an A, if you will. Um, and it's hard the other way around. Great products do help B teams perform for a period, but inevitably that runs out. Um, there's an adage that I learned from Herb Kelleher. Herb was the
Oh
founder,
yeah, on the Southwest.
CEO of Southwest Airlines, and he had some great rules. And one he taught me was hire for will and train for skill. And I love that, which is, you can't change the will, the heart, the purpose, the values of an individual, but you can upskill them.
Yeah.
And so hire for will, train for skill. That's always been a kind of primary rule of mine when I meet and interview people. And so building A teams start with building people of will.
That leads me to my other question, because you've been the CEO, you're on boards, and from your board seats and from being a CEO, what do you see as the most common leadership pattern that sort of caps growth, and what's the fastest way to fix it?
Yeah. Oh, there are a lot of different things that cap growth. I think one of the things that is uh, perhaps most acute is this notion of complacency, which is,
Mm,
Andy Grove said, "Only the paranoid survive." When the going is good, that's when I get worried. Um, it's hard to sustain 20, 30% growth per annum. Your team gets very comfortable. And so you have to keep creating challenges. And why do we want to go to the next hill? And why does it matter? And how do we sustain this? So success sometimes is its own worst enemy, and complacency or satisfaction um, that comes with that success. I think is one thing you've got to absolutely look out for.
Yeah, never be satisfied. Never be satisfied with your celebrate, but don't be
Yeah,
satisfied.
yeah, and you get into a leadership position. Let's say you're gaining market share. You become a leading brand, a definitive brand. Now, what you do is you wind up managing risk and downside, and
Mm,
that's what happens to a lot of large corporations. Is they're more concerned about the downside risk than the upside opportunity.
ah, that makes sense. I had a recent a brand came to us. They're in the food business. Brand came to us because and they had been through three marketing firms, and that's always a red flag for me when they call up and say that. And and they started explaining what the problem was, and he thought it was an advertising and marketing problem. Uh, and I was listening to the CEO, he's the founder, and they had scaled from like 0 to 20 million over a period of about 6 or 7 years. And but they were stuck, they were stagnant, and he kept saying that it was a marketing problem, and maybe the creative's not good, blah blah blah. And so I listened, and he had hired this guy because they had a brand, but they also wholesaled.
Yeah,
And he hired this guy in the food business that I knew from just I knew of him, and the guy was like an A-plus player as far as sales. He knew everybody in the industry. I mean, the guy was a powerhouse, and he couldn't get anything done. And I just it bothered me. So I said to him, I said, "Would you mind doing a 2-day offsite? Let's break it down and see if this is really a marketing or advertising problem." And he agreed to it, and we went. And within 3 hours, one of the first questions I asked the A-plus player. I said, "Why do you think you can't make any headway?" And he said, "It's very simple." He said, "He wants to be on every single sales call." He said, "And I have to manage to his schedule, not the prospect schedule." He
right.
said, "So I can't make any headway." And I said, "Why do you have to be on every sales call?" He's like, "I built this company. I know what to say. I know how to do it." I said, "Then what do you need to hire people for if you can do it all? You can't do it all." And it took the rest of that day and the rest of the next day to get him off of that, to get him to finally let
Yeah,
loose. Because I said, "You're running operations, you're running marketing, you're running your warehouse, you're running importing, you're doing all this stuff." And he finally did. This was about 3 years ago. He finally did let go, and the A-plus player, this guy David, he started booking business, and I mean the sales were growing at a rapid pace. Then the CEO was like, "Oh my God, this guy is a god." I'm like, "Yeah, but you were the bottleneck. Now you're able to grow." So
yeah.
so
I've seen that more times than I care to admit. Uh, Founder syndrome is real. And a lot of founders are amazing at their ability to do multiple things. And, that's how they create companies. And yet, how you run a company at 5 million is different than at 50 million. And if you're
absolutely,
not able to scale people and to figure out how to shift your role and to focus your value added, you are going to become the problem or the bottleneck. And oftentimes it's the rare founder that can actually change beyond that. So I'm delighted about your story, but I've seen a lot of founders struggle to make that change, and that holds them back and their companies back.
yeah. I talk about this on with anybody, especially entrepreneurs, that I founded my first business, and it was a total disaster. Not not from the consumer side of it. It was a retail store, but from the operation side, and it was because of me. I had that founder syndrome. I was trying to do everything. I was making all the decisions, and I was a total bottleneck. And I
Yeah,
feel so sorry for the people who worked for me at that time. And it really took me, after about 3 years, I finally said, I'm not one to quit, but I was like, there's something wrong. And it really took another 2 years after that for me to realize that it was me who was the problem. A lot of therapy and a lot of
yeah,
talking to people, but it was me who was the problem. And I sort of got involved with another company called Sutton Place Gourmet in Washington, D.C. And it was a small company. We started growing, but they had really good he had a really good CEO and a really good CFO. And it was there that I realized what my issues were. And sort of that was probably better. education for me than B school was, than graduate school was. So it was it was phenomenal, but it really took some hard looking at myself to never make that same mistake. And still to this day, even after doing some other businesses, I carry that with me all the time because I think, am I being a good leader? Am I being a good manager?
Right.
Am I being a good process builder, or am I trying to do everything myself again? So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, founders need good boards as well. People that they trust who can hold the mirror up, tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, you know, time to change, or you got to let go, or, whatever it may be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We did a shaving brand a few years ago, and was fortunate to have John Scully and David Scully. John was the former CEO of Apple, and David was a president of Heinz, and they were both investors, but they became really good mentors for me. Especially David, he really took a lot of time to continue to point out in a positive way what I was I don't want to say what I was doing wrong, but what I could be better at,
Yeah.
And you have to, I think, you have to let your ego down in order to take that sort of information in and use it. Right. A lot of times, people, I think, when they start hearing criticism, they shut down. But I think if you listen to it, especially from seasoned people like that, you're only going to become better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In that case, you were surrounded with great people who cared about you and were able to, share truth and help you overcome that. And so, for any founder entrepreneur who thinks that advertising or marketing is the issue, I encourage you to look in the mirror. Probably not.
No, I don't think. I don't think that marketing is always the issue.
No.
We've seen it a number of times, but yeah. Um, so what I guess this goes back to consumers now. Like, what do you think leaders misunderstand about the conscious consumer?
Hmm.
Um, what they say versus what they actually do.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that organizations can get wrong. One is to think about the conscious consumer as a consumer. Um, there's such an array of segments and behaviors and psychographic differences amongst the conscious consumer. So it's not a monolith. It truly can be taken apart. You've got to know who you're going after and what your core proposition is. Come back to the truth about your unique point of difference. How are you a solution? What need are you meeting in their lives, and how do you do it uniquely well? Know your value proposition, right? For me, value equals quality divided by price, right? And so, if you want to add value, you can drive quality, or you can lower price. So those are the constraints of that. So, what are you doing to build a higher quality solution over time, and stay focused on that? Be a student of the consumer, listen closely, get feedback. A lot of people treat their customer service group as a cost center
Yeah,
versus a value added center. I would often sit down, put the headset on at Guinness and at Burt's at Seventh Gen to listen to the consumer and get out there and stay close, feel it, and then keep innovating with that consumer in mind, right? So innovation is the lifeblood of great organizations. You got to keep pushing and creating and testing and learning.
yeah. The guy I spoke about before, Henry Nacella, he told me this was back when we were starting a skincare brand or beauty brand, and he said, you're starting up and you're going to make changes. You're going to have to pivot. The product's never going to be perfect. Don't try and strive for perfection. You want to listen to what people are saying about the product. How are they using it, et cetera. And I said, well, I said, well, we could commission a study and we can do this. He said, how about this? He said, how about every Friday you pick up the phone and you call 5 customers who bought your product. He
Yeah.
said, or 5 customers who had the most complaints, 5 customers who do anything, and just call them up and ask them and give them something in return for spending time on the phone with you. Send them an eye cream, send them send them an eyeliner. Do what you have to do, but talk to them. He said,
Yeah.
forget about studies. He said, talk to the customer and find out. He said, especially the ones that don't have the best things to say about you.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't want to get yelled at. He said, why? What could happen? You get yelled at, you're going to find something out about your company, and maybe you'll win back a friend.
Right.
And he was 100% right. And I've employed that ever since. And I tell people to do that. I think it's one of the best. It was one of the best ways to figure out the problems with your product or company or service.
Yeah. Mine is similar, but a little different, which is in ratings and reviews, I don't read the fives and the ones, I read the three. The truth is in the middle there. And if you can get a three to a four or five, you've won, right? It's going to be very hard to move a one, right? But if I can move the twos and threes up a notch or two, then I'm winning and I'm learning. You
Yeah.
know, what is it that I can do every day to make this just a little bit better?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I found it to be great advice, especially for startups. You don't know what's happening, and you're going to have to make changes. You're never going to come out with the perfect product, and you have to figure out
Yeah.
what people like, don't like, what they feel about the price, relative to quality, value. So I found that to be great, and again, I still employ it. I still love it, and it's true. Sometimes you have to take a hard look. You're going to get yelled at. Some people are not going to be happy. So yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah. And
Um,
perfection's the enemy of the good. So
yeah,
if you wait for perfection, you're never going to get there. So you got to balance all the equation.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're coming down to the end. I appreciate you coming on. If there's anything closing, any kind of message to young entrepreneurs, scaling entrepreneurs that you may have in your back pocket. And again, I'll share your document. I think it's a
Yep.
fantastic
Great.
document.
Yeah. I think the one thing that every leader and entrepreneur needs to do is really know themselves, right? If you want to lead an organization, build a sustainable and durable business, it starts with building yourself. Do the hard work to understand who you are, what your core values are, truly, truthfully, what your goals are, and how do you integrate all those things such that your values, your principles grow with the organization. At seventh generation, we were and Burt's, we were on phenomenal growth curves, and it wasn't a threat. But I would tell the team, if we're growing 20% a year, that means in under 4 years, we're going to double the size of this company. And if you personally don't take accountability for your growth and figure out how to double in the next 4 years, the company will leave you behind. So take that energy and emphasis and think about yourself as something worth investing in, something that's dynamic, something that's growing, and spend time on that. Really work it. I do it all the time. I keep a notebook. I've got my goals written. I check in. I have accountability partners who hold me to my goals, and a lot of that is around what am I doing to grow myself. So that's my word of encouragement to everyone is you've got a lot of bandwidth, you've got a lot of talent, keep growing it so that you can keep growing your organization.
Yeah, that's great advice because that's one of the reasons I love doing this show because I get to speak to so many different people and I learn from it. And I like to speak. I've written a couple of books, but I love to listen to what other people are saying and doing because you can't know everything and you've got to keep growing. I think if I stopped, I would be, I don't know. I don't think I could, I don't know what I would do with myself.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. Again, I appreciate it. I think it was a masterclass in how to grow a brand and how to raise capital. And I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. To everybody out there, I'll put a link to the document that we referenced. Again, take it. It's a great tool. I'll put it in the description. We'll put it out on social when we do the clips next week, and yeah, it's fantastic. And thanks for sharing that. And until next week, I will see you guys later.